Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm diving into one of the most critical parts of game development, prototyping. I'm working on a small scope game to learn game development. The game I'm creating is a simple 2D top-down shooter where you play as a wizard battling monsters. While this type of game could be wrapped up in a month by most indie devs worth their salt, I've set myself an entire year to explore every detail of the game development process. Over the course of this year, I'll build a game by following this roadmap. For this stage of development, I've broken it down into 12 distinct prototypes, each one tackling a different facet of the game. In this video, I'm not only going to explain why I decided to build these prototypes, but I'll also showcase what I've completed so far. Whether you're a fellow game developer or are just curious about game design, stick around because there's a lot to unpack. Before we get into the nitty-gritty of my prototypes, let's talk about what prototyping even is. In game development, a prototype is an early version of your game. It acts as a test bed where you can experiment with the core ideas of the game first without the pressure of perfecting every pixel. By building a series of small, focused prototypes, you can rapidly iterate on game mechanics, learn what works and what doesn't, and ultimately reduce the risk of investing too much time in a feature that might not even be fun to play. Think of prototyping as your opportunity to get a feel for the game's soul. When you're developing any game, there are countless mechanics to consider. Do the attacks feel satisfying? Is the boss fight engaging enough? Does the player movement feel fluid? Each prototype is designed to isolate and explore these questions. It's breaking down a complex problem into individual simpler problems before you put it all back together. This process not only helps in fine-tuning gameplay, but also gives you confidence that every element is contributing to the overall experience. For game developers, this approach is very valuable. Instead of risking months of work on a single monolithic build, you can test ideas incrementally. If one prototype reveals a fundamental flaw in your mechanics, you can pivot without having to overhaul the entire project. And beyond just debugging, prototypes allow you to experiment with creative variations. Ultimately, the prototyping process is all about learning and evolving. It's a practical demonstration of iterative game design that can lead to a more polished and engaging game later down the line. Let's take a closer look at my plan. I've divided my development process into 5 major phases with a total of 12 prototypes. The first phase is the core gameplay systems. This phase lays the foundation for everything else. In the player character prototype, I focus on the basic controls and movement of the wizard. It's all about making sure that the character feels responsive and fun to play. Next, in the spells prototype, I explore different spell mechanics, how they are cast, their effects, and how they interact with the environment. Finally, the boss fight prototype. This is a critical step where I set up a boss battle to see how the boss's core moveset interacts with the player. Building on the solid foundation of Phase 1, Phase 2 enhances the experience with additional layers of interaction. In the apprentice prototype, I introduce our AI companion because everyone needs a friend. Aww. And in the interactables prototype, I plan to design the items of importance and personal clues. These are environmental items related to the boss's history and lore. Looking ahead, Phase 3 will focus on storytelling and player interface. The spellbook prototype will serve as an in-game guide and a way to customize the spells. I plan to use the dialogue prototype to test how narrative elements and character dialogue integrate with gameplay. And the NPC prototype will help refine interaction with non-player characters to add depth to the game's worlds. The focus in Phase 4 is on refining and polishing the experience. The prototypes planned include a boss saving prototype. This is a system that adds player choices and consequences after a boss fight, letting the players have an impact on the narrative. Then a graphics prototype where I'll start integrating more refined visuals and effects. This is to experiment with how my final game will look and feel. And finally, an audio prototype. Sound effects, music, menu sounds. This prototype aims to craft an immersive soundscape for the final game. And last but not least, the final step is to bring everything together into a final cohesive build. The final prototype will integrate all elements tested across the earlier phases and ensure that the game is balanced and ready for testing. In prototyping, every single prototype builds upon the last and is a deliberate step towards creating the final game. The mechanics honed in Phase 1 serve as the backbone for the enhanced interactions in phase 2. Currently, I've finished up to phase 2, and as you can see, I have a clear plan for the next phase of development. Once I have the final prototype ready, I plan on letting all of you play what I've made and hopefully give me feedback on the game. For this, I've linked a Google form in the description. Please give your email and I'll personally let you know when the final prototype is available for you to play. So this is the first prototype. It's just the player moving around and the camera following the player. You can get on a broom and move a little bit faster. You can press space to dodge, or if you're on foot, you press space to teleport. Also, there are collisions for the tree, and if you're on a broom, the collision is on the top of the tree. Getting to the second prototype, now we actually have spells in the game. A left click will shoot out these fireballs, a right click will make this melee attack wherever I'm aiming, Q will charge up an attack and shoot it. You can do quick shots or you can hold it for a long shot, and E basically is a nuke. On the broom you can only use the quick attacks, while on foot you can use the more powerful attacks. And now we have the boss prototype. As you can see, I have created this cute little monster and he'll be our first boss. He has a couple of attacks as well as the ability to follow me. There's no health bar yet, but you can lock onto him. And finally we have the apprentice prototype. So this is just an apprentice who follows us around. He's slower, so he'll take a while. I'm on a broom. That's the 4 prototypes I worked on. Wow, that was a lot. Thanks for sticking with me through this deep dive into my game dev journey. To recap, I've shown you how I break down development into clear manageable phases, from core gameplay to advanced mechanics. This helps ensure that every aspect of the game is carefully crafted. By starting with prototypes for the player characters, spells and boss fights, I've laid a solid foundation. Moving forward, I'm excited to tackle narrative features and polish the game in the upcoming phases. If you found this breakdown helpful, please consider subscribing for more insights into game development. I'd love to hear your own experiences with prototyping. Drop a comment below with your tips or any questions that you might have. And don't forget to fill up that Google form so that I can let you know when you can play the final prototype. Thanks for watching. See you next time.